This story was submitted by Peter Rodriguez. The first story is of our family dog. His name was Arnold, and we had him all of his 15 years. During his last years, he had arthritis and had a hard time getting around, so my parents gave him my old room since the weather affected his arthritis, especially during the winter. Well, on the night we put him to sleep, I went to visit my parents and I saw him in a bad state. He'd been let outside to do his business, and I found he was no longer able to get up due to his arthritis flaring up. We took him to the vet, and he recommended putting him to sleep. Since he was also sick from another issue, nothing more could be done for him. I stayed with him in the room when the shot was given, and made sure he wasn't alone. I stayed at my parents' that night, since we were all kind of broken up, since he was part of the family. I was on the couch and heard some shuffling in Arnold's room, along with some of the toys that he still liked to play with being thrown around. My parents heard it as well. As we talked about it the next morning, none of us were scared really. We just smiled. That was the only time anything was heard from his room. So it was like he came to say goodbye. I had a dog named Biscuit that I found, or he found me, as a stray, and I adopted him. He was a great and awesome dog. I work for the U.S. Air Force, and I travel a lot, so my sister and parents would help watch him for me while I was traveling. Sometimes I would be gone for 3 weeks to a month, so it was taking a toll on him. I was on a temporary duty station at a base up north. I had a dream about Biscuit getting out of the fence while at my parents' house. I didn't think anything about it, and when I called my parents, they said all was fine. Only, my last day there, I couldn't sleep. I had a weird feeling for some reason. When I finally did get to sleep, I had a dream about Biscuit. He came up to me and jumped in my arms. We had a great time and were playing pretty much my entire dream. Later that morning when my sister picked me up from the airport after I arrived back home, she told me that Biscuit had run away. The gate was left open, and he got out. I tried looking for him, but to no avail. My parents did end up finding him about a week later in one of the alleys in the neighborhood. But he had already passed. He didn't have any marks on him, so we didn't think he was mauled or anything, and I don't really know how long he had been dead, but in my heart, I truly feel that he visited me one last time. These stories were submitted by Kill723. In 7th grade, I owned an iPod Nano, a fairly old one. It did not have any alarm clock features. I was playing the computer in the office, down the hall from my bedroom. My iPod was on the speaker, which only consisted of a power button and 2 buttons to control the volume. My iPod just randomly started playing music. I was home alone, and even if someone had turned it on, I would have heard them moving around my room. In 4th grade, I was over my friend's house. I'll call him AD. Since we were both in 4th grade, we were immature and highly imaginative. So it makes me doubt the legitimacy of what happened. Although this is unrelated to the story, there was an interesting feature about this house. In his room, inside his closet, was an entrance to a room. Thinking back, it was likely the space between the wall of his rooms inside the house and the roof. It had writing from the previous owner of the house. Like the average 4th grader, AD thought that his house was haunted. He told me a story of how a babysitter was over watching him and his brother. And if I remember correctly, he said something flew across the room into a glass, or maybe it was a glass that flew across the room. So his claims that his house was haunted seemed to have some merit. Anyway, we were in his basement, with all the lights turned off. We were interested to see if something would happen. We shut the door a little at the top of the basement stairs, so only light came from the windows at the far end of the basement hallway. Nothing happened, so we climbed the stairs to turn some of the lights back on. Just before I reached the top of the stairs, I saw a blinding flash of white light. My friend didn't see it, and it was unlike me to imagine such a thing. I'm still not sure if I witnessed something paranormal or just imagined it. I'm not sure when this story happened. It was just me and my dog. I was in bed, probably doing something on the computer, when I heard, if my memory is correct, the sound of someone opening a door and walking directly below me. My dog heard it too. Nobody had actually come in the house, and it was likely it was the sound of their neighbors opening their side door, which faces the north end of my room. It seemed too loud to be the neighbors, though, since I can't think of any instances where I heard them opening their outside doors. This was in the winter of my freshman year in high school. It had been around 9 o'clock, and I was in the family room, practicing a dance routine of mine for gym class. I did not want to perform tomorrow, but I knew I needed to practice so I can make it as painless as possible. My dog was with me. From where I was standing, I could look south into the kitchen and see through the kitchen windows on the south side of the house, next to the driveway. For whatever reason, I was looking this direction, and I saw what looked like the red brake lights of a car passing through the kitchen window and out of view, heading in the direction of the garage. It was dark out, so I just saw the lights and not the body of the car. Though this didn't bother me. I reasoned it was just too dark to see the car itself when there's just a little light reflecting off of it. My parents weren't home, so I expected the lights to be them returning. My dog saw these lights too, or at least he seemed to perk up. I stopped my practice and waited for my parents to come inside. But they never did. I waited several minutes, but still no sign of my parents. I decided I would take action. I grabbed a large pocket knife and went outside to investigate. There was no car to be found. I walked around the garage and the backyard, but found absolutely nothing. Had I found an intruder, I doubt I would have had the courage to harm him with my knife. It was mostly just to intimidate them. Considerably freaked out, I went back inside and locked the door. I kept the pocket knife with me and sat down to think over what had just happened. A feeling of dread came over me, and a thought, a strong, prominent thought crossed my mind. I thought about killing myself, and then my dog with my pocket knife. While I suffered from depression and sometimes thought about suicide, it was very out of character for me to actually think about how I would kill myself. I normally just thought about the idea in general before forcing it from my mind. I told my parents what happened when they got home, and would later ask my mom to take my pocket knives and hide them somewhere so I wouldn't be tempted to hurt myself with them. While I cannot prove that the thoughts of suicide were connected to that event, I have a reason to believe they weren't. Since I had a knife with me, maybe it was just a fleeting thought to get out of doing this dance tomorrow. But that doesn't explain why I also thought about killing my dog. For those of you reading or hearing this story who are concerned about me, I promise you I didn't hurt myself. And it's behind me now. This story is a combination of bittersweet and fear. It's a very fond memory. While I no longer have the entry I recorded later that night, I still remember what happened very well. I was in 8th grade on a 3-day field trip to Washington, D.C. We had already left the D.C. area and decided to spend the afternoon at Gettysburg. A very entertaining tour guide boarded our bus and showed us around some back roads throughout the former battlefields. We saw some memorials, monuments, and heard great stories. We got to run around the part of the actual battlefield, doing parkour off rocks and climbing through rocky alcoves. It was so much fun. That's not the point of the story, though. I only mention it because it better explains what we did after dinner. After dinner, we went on a ghost tour inside and around the house of Jenny Wade, the only civilian killed during the Battle of Gettysburg. While I was outside, I captured several photographs of orbs and a single photo of an unknown misty form. My camera occasionally refused to focus, but it returned to normal if I faced it the other direction. While I was inside the house, my friend believes that he captured the spirit of Jenny herself in a photo taken on his phone. He doesn't have the photo anymore, but it showed a milky white form, much more defined than the misty shape I had captured. He started crying, which was very out of character for him. I had not seen him cry since he learned his grandmother had died. And I did not see him cry after that until he became overly involved in high school romance. I had experienced myself in the house, but much weaker than this. I'm not sure if I can ever call it an experience, because it seemed like I could have been subconsciously faking it. I felt a very heavy, depressing presence. I sank down to my knees, not understanding what the present was or what it meant. Before we left the property and headed home, I captured one of my best photos while I was there, the other being the mist. I hope you enjoyed those subscriber-submitted scary stories. Please, if you have any stories you would like to submit, please email them to me. I would really appreciate it, and I will read them again. I have no other subscriber submissions actually right now, so I guess this series is going to be put on a hold until I receive at least 2 or 3 more, guys. So please email me your stories. My email will be in the description below, alright? And remember, there's always someone or something watching you.